Welcome back to Empowered and Out. I'm your host, Jonathan, and today I'm thrilled to introduce you to someone who truly embodies what it means to lead with passion and gratitude. Today I'm joined by Francisco Rodriguez, a first generation queer Latino with 7 years of HR experience and a background in higher education. He's a people first leader, DEI advocate, and community builder. His journey spans from founding Riverside Pride in California to rebranding an employee resource group that went on to be nominated for multiple awards in Orlando. And on top of that, he's an LGBTQ plus athlete, a connector, and a strong believer in living authentically and unapologetically. What I love most about Francisco is that his story isn't just about career success. It's about resilience, triumph, and the power of showing up fully as yourself, even when the odds are stacked against you. And today we're going to dive into his journey, his insights, and his advice for other LGBTQ plus professionals navigating work and life. So if you're a longtime listener or tuning in for the first time, I'm so glad you're here. Francisco, welcome to Empowered and Out. I'm so glad that you are here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Jonathan.
You are very welcome. So let's talk about your journey as a first gen queer Latino. So, can you share what it's been like growing up as a first generation queer Latino in the United States?
Yeah, I think the first time that I realized what it was to be first gen and the definition and what that meant, sort of how to navigate with that layer on your skin, per se, I think it was like during undergraduate school and grad school that I began to really deepen those layers and begin to realize, like, what does this mean to me? How has this impacted my life? What does this mean to my family? What does this mean to the people I connect with? And so it was in graduate school that I started to do some more research. I connected with other people who were first gen. I connected with classmates. I did research on authors who wrote about this. And that's when I really realized, like, okay, it's a thing and there's a lot that comes with it. Being the first to do so many things, so many projects, to be involved in so many different things that oftentimes you don't realize you should be a part of, or maybe you're not always invited to the table, as they say. And that for me was like my first realization of, like, this is what it means to be first gen. It means, like, you're the first one to do so many things, which oftentimes comes with the famous imposter syndrome, right? And so then
Mhm.
you think, like, wait, should I be sitting here? Should I be taking this role? Should I be signing this? Should I be, like, spearheading this event or whatever it is, right? And so from that moment on, I think I just began this, like, light bulb moment of, like, I have to do these things for myself because my family has no knowledge on this. My siblings have no knowledge on this. And that is sort of the journey you just have to take once you're like, if no one else has done it and no one else will do it for me, I have to do it for myself, right? So it's sort of stepping into that mentality and just realizing that is where you hold your, I guess, your power.
That's awesome. So, what unique challenges and strengths do you feel that from that perspective has given you in your career?
I think the uniqueness of it is definitely the way that I've met people. I mean, so I'm from the West Coast. I was raised in California. I'm born in Washington State. So my whole life has been Washington, Oregon, California. And then 4 years ago, I moved to Florida, to Orlando specifically, and I've been here ever since. I think it's so interesting to me when I meet people who are from other countries because they don't have that first gen experience. They
Mhm.
were raised in their other country, whatever it is, Brazil, Venezuela, Colombia, which is heavily populated here. And then when I meet people who are just that come from a long history of being US Americans, right? So then they also don't know that experience. So I think sort of being connected in the middle is very interesting because then I hear stories of other people, and it's just different, right? Like, a lot of them came here as adults or have that long history, and I find myself that I don't have either, right? So, like, my family immigrated here, and then essentially that's the experience of a first gen, right? So it's just kind of
Mhm.
like acknowledging that you're sometimes stuck in the middle, and that you now have this biculture, basically, because you don't necessarily belong to one, but now you have a mix of both, and that's just like your reality. So I think just connecting with other first gen people is very interesting because they have, like, very, very similar stories. So, like, my story is not unique at all, but it is unique in the sense of like we sort of live in this third space, right? That we have to make because that is the nature of where we come from. And I think that's been very unique, as well as like I mentioned, imposter syndrome. So that is
Mhm.
very, very common, I think, for first gen people to experience because of not having that prior knowledge, right? Like the parents not really knowing anything, even siblings. Like none of my siblings went to college. So it's just kind of like I couldn't really ask them for anything as a reference. I had to ask friends or I had to ask mentors, things like that. And you take that with you everywhere you go. So in the sports league that I play, in the corporate world where I work in, almost anywhere you go, you have a little bit of that imposter syndrome in the back of your head. And you realize like it's just there. And it's not like the main character, right? But it just disturbs you just a tiny bit, just enough
Mhm.
for you to think about it. And I think that's the uniqueness of the first gen experience.
Nice. You had mentioned in your what you had sent over to me that you were born premature and, not knowing if you'd even survive. So, how does that early part of your story shape how you show up today?
Yes, I was born premature. I was born at 6 months,
Mm.
which is very, yeah. So I didn't actually realize how wild that story was until my mom told me much older. But I was born in a very small town in Washington State, and essentially I spent my entire first year in the hospital until I was released. But basically, it was almost like a and I don't like cliche stories, but it almost felt kind of like a cliche battle for like existing, right? Like battle for life. Because in that one year, I also had to have surgery as a baby, and just basically in the way I see it now as a 32-year-old man is like that was my first initial fight for life. And I think had I not known that story, I might have see things a little bit different. But because I know that story and I have scars to show it, I think it almost empowers me to be like, hey, you know what? This was my very first fight to be here, to exist, to be myself, to be authentic. Thankfully, I never had any issues, despite like the shortcoming of the birth and being
Mhm.
premature and all that stuff. So I think to me, it was just a sign of like resilience, but also a sign of like you can be perfectly healthy, you can thrive, you can do whatever you want. And so whenever I think of that story, I just think of like, yeah, that was my first fight. Like I have so many more fights, good fights, as they say, right, to give.
Mhm.
And I think that shows up in the way that I try to live. I mean, we're all trying our best. I try to live as authentic as possible. And part of those fights is basically the things that I'm passionate about, the things that I enjoy, even the little things, right? Even just like spending time with friends and finding small pockets of moments to do things that make you happy. So, but that story, going back to that story, yes, it always just kind of gives me that little push and motivation to be like, hey, you know what? I did this without even knowing, right? Like this was my first fight in the world. Like I can do anything.
That's so I mean, I'm kind of in awe at a year in the hospital. That's a long time to spend. But I mean, you were premature, so that kind of makes sense. And then to have to go through a surgery and then to come out on top, I mean, that's amazing. Do you ever feel that sense of defying the odds fuels your drive in HR and community work?
I do. I do feel like, and I think it piles up with almost everything else that I've mentioned, like being first gen, right? Being queer, being Latino, being premature. So like all of that sort of intersects. And I think that is what pushes me in a way to be like, hey, I can beat the odds. I can be in
Mhm.
these spaces where maybe there hasn't been someone like myself. I mean, many times in corporate I've seen very few other queer people. And even in my current workplace, I am the only gay male, at least that I know. And there's a few other queer people, but they're female. And so I'm the only one. And so again, it's just sort of like, okay, I'm the one and it's fine, right? It's not that there's an issue. I think it's just more of it's okay. Like I've been here before.
Yeah.
I've been in this place before where I'm the only one and where I have to speak up for myself and I have to like fight the good fights and just get my foot in and do things that I'm passionate about and find ways to do that, right? Connecting with people, building relationships, building friendships, maybe leading projects, maybe showcasing that like I do know what I'm talking about, or presenting a project, presenting something. And that's how you like slowly begin to earn the trust of coworkers. And then they also see like what you've done in the past. And maybe they want you to replicate it. So there's so many different ways that I think that also falls into like work ethic, right? Like I think so it's like multi-layered, but for me, and I've always been very much like career driven. So I've always been a nerd in school. I've always been like, hey, I want to be in all these clubs and I want to be in part of all these projects and stuff like that. So I've always been that kid. And so I think that helps in corporate world because that's exactly what they want.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think it does help that like, being queer, being Latino, I'm like, okay, I it's okay to feel a little different, but I think if you have that support from people, it definitely makes it easier, right? To then push those things that you want to see, and maybe that you don't see often because there isn't many people like yourself.
Yeah, it's one of the things that even me as a coach has to do. I have to create that know, like, and trust factor. And I would say every employee kind of has to do that anyways, just in general, because, and I feel just to be able to move up if you're wanting to move up in where you work, but also it takes it to another level as a queer professional because there are a lot of times that we may not be trusted because of some dumb reason because we're queer, because they might not think that we're, maybe right for it, right for the position or right for a project. But when you have that drive and that push and you are creating that, you know the know, like, and trust factor, that it's going to help you move forward, and everyone's going to want to reach out to you for advice if you're working on some project or suggest that you lead the project. And you've already shown, based on what I said and, the intro, like you've done many things to lead, and it's pretty amazing. Because it's going to sound funny to say this because I'm in my 50s and you're in your 30s, but like to do that right out of the, pretty young in your careers, it shows that you have drive, you have ambition, you have goals that you want to achieve. And I think that's huge to do, not just as a regular professional, but also I would say even more so as a queer professional, just based on how
Definitely.
things have been going right now in the community and the world as we live.
Yeah, definitely.
So what originally drew you into the HR industry, and how has being queer and Latino influenced the way that you approach HR?
Yeah, I started in HR many, many years ago when I was in community college. I interned for a like family-owned business, and it was a very short internship. I think it was like 3 months, and that was sort of my intro to the HR world. So it was very much like admin work, super intern level, just like doing things for the employer, not necessarily learning, but more so just like, hey, do this, do that. And that just, I don't know, from there on it just sparked my interest in like so what else does HR do? Like who are these people, and like why are they here? What do they represent? And so from that point forward, I started to lean more into the profession. I started to realize, most companies have an HR person or team, and I began to see like all the list of duties that they do and all the things that they do. And that just really interested me. I think for me, being in HR means that you're all about the employee experience. So you care about people. And naturally, as you can imagine, someone who's very much community driven and, all about uh, the self and who we are and all the things that intersectionality has to offer, it was naturally a thing for me that I saw myself in. And so I was like, oh, a profession that focuses on people. This is totally me. And it's corporate. It's sort of like I thrive in that type of like, I need rules, I need regulations, I need sort of like these playbooks that kind of show you like I'm a very much like analytical person in that sense. But it's funny because I'm also extremely subjective and very much like, no, I need to listen to the whole story to find out what happened. So I think that's when I realized like HR is my field. Like it's structured enough, but it's also open enough where you can still protect people and you can still uplift people and you can still push them to be the best version of themselves. And so I just realized like, okay, this is for me. And for me specifically, CHAR has foundations in DEI, or at least I like to believe. So diversity, equity, inclusion for me are the foundations of the way I decide to work.
Mhm.
And this is why I think it flows so naturally to me to be in this field, because I try to look at the bigger scheme of things. I try to look at like, are we being inclusive? Are we being diverse with the way we hire people? Are we being equitable? Do we do, is one person just benefiting, or is it the entire company? What we do for one, we should do for all, and all of this type of thinking that I think should just be natural, right? If you're an HR professional.
Mhm.
And so I think having that, I think makes it easy for me to be in the field. And then the fact that you get to work with third party people, you get to work with vendors, you get to work with like people that connect with your employees. That is extremely important to me because that goes back to my foundation of like community work and my foundation of like people feeling seen and heard. You know, an employee relations case, someone wanting to be heard or listened to because of something happening. So being in this field, I think is very comes very natural to me. And of course, there's limitations like anything because capitalism and corporate. But I think the good that we do try to make, we can amplify and we can really almost like curate it to us and to help others if that is truly our goal. So I think I just try to do that as much as possible. And obviously I know when I cannot and when maybe I have like limitations and whatnot. But like I said, I think as long as we try to do what we can,
Mhm.
then we're on the right path.
Do you find that there are any lessons that you've learned about inclusion at the organizational level that you wish more companies understood?
Inclusion, yeah, I think a lot of the times maybe having people that can widen your mind a little bit more on what it means to include others, because I think sometimes we run with an idea of like, hey, we want to do this for everyone, or like we want to include all these people. But then being in this space, I think I've learned that like you have to look at it from multiple angles, multiple perspectives. You have to have people who maybe have been there 1 year versus someone who's been there like 20 years. And maybe have those two people talk and see what they think. And so I think a lot of the times the events and projects that I've led or been a part of have led me to think that way, because I then realized like it's not just about like, hey, we want to be inclusive, let's just do it. You have to think beyond that because there's so many layers to it and so many people are affected by it. And as much as it sucks, sometimes you're like, hey, it just takes like one step to include everyone. But then you realize that maybe other departments might not be okay with it, or other departments are like, hey, I don't want this, or so I think that's what I mean when I say like you have to be open to critique and commentary and like other perspectives, because it's easy to run with one idea and just try to implement it, but then you realize like, okay, maybe it's a good thing to have all perspectives in, and then you can make a decision. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's so many different ways to add DEI initiatives in organizations. So I think, yeah, I think people are doing great. It's just wild to me what has happened in the past like 3 years with with DEI in this country, and especially here in Florida. So it amazes me.
Well, you made a really good point in that it's so important to grab the perspective of others and to bring other people in to include them. I know one of the things I learned with one of the last roles that I had before I started coaching was how important it was to collaborate with so many different people. Even if you don't agree or you don't even take what they say to move forward with it, at least you got that opinion of someone and you got to hear what they had to say. Even we all have opinions. We all, like you reference, grabbing someone who's a year into the job, or someone who's been there for 20 years. Bringing both of those perspectives in is huge, because someone who's brand new might see it from a completely different light compared to someone who's been there for a while. The person who's been there for a while may or may not want to embrace change if you're wanting to, possibly change, something within the organization that you're within HR. But that person who's brand new might see it as a great way to be innovative, to be leading in something where I think we always have to be adaptable to change. And I think, but when we collaborate and bring other voices in, I think it actually makes us stronger as an organization, and probably even more so, more trusting. More people are going to trust if you're willing to hear those different voices and those to bring in to the conversation.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about racism and growth. So, first time you experienced racism was very memorable. Can you walk us through that story?
Yeah, I think so this happened in 2018, I think. I was with a friend of mine and his dad, and this was out in California, in Southern California, and we went to an AutoZone. We were all in the same vehicle. We stopped at an AutoZone because the car just wasn't working properly, and so we wanted assistance. And so the experience was very interesting to me because at the time I did not realize like what was going on, but I wasn't a stranger to these type of terms, right? And like examples of like racism and all this stuff. I was in the beginning of like grad school. And so for me, I was like right in the middle of like researching and like going to conferences and doing all these different things. And so like having this moment happen in like real life was interesting to see, and maybe not even realizing like what was going on. So we stopped into the AutoZone, and essentially what happened is my friend went in by himself to ask for help, and his dad and I stayed behind. He went in, he came back, and he basically told us like, "Hey, I asked for help. They told me that they don't have any more staff right now. It's late in the day. They don't know when they'll get to us, if they get to us." So it sort of felt like kind of dismissing someone, a customer, and we just weren't sure what was going to happen. Next thing that happens is I go in with his dad and he stays behind. So the reason why we were staying behind is because the vehicle was still on.
Oh,
So
okay.
we didn't want to leave the car by itself, still running in the parking lot as another person was going in for help.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so then this time he stayed back. I went in with his dad, and essentially the same thing, right? We're like, "Hey, we need help. Like, we have the car running outside. We want to see what's wrong with it. It's, whatever, it's having issues." And I believe it was the assistant manager or the store manager or something like that. He just said like, "Oh, we'll have someone right out." And I was like, "Oh, perfect. Like, this is great. This is what we want." So I go back and I go back to my friend and tell him like, "Hey, they're gonna come out with help." And he's just like confused. Like, "What do you mean? Like, I just went in, 5 minutes ago and they didn't have anyone." And so we all walk in, leaving the car turned on outside. And my friend just blatantly tells him out loud, like, "Hey, why didn't you help me, but you helped them?" And so the guy was like, "I didn't realize you were all together." So he didn't realize that we all came together. And again, I don't, to me, like now reflecting back on it, I'm like, I guess like I didn't see it at the time, but so like my friend's dad is very much like fair skinned, um almost like myself, a little bit more um like fair skin, a little bit more like European features, beard, things like that. Whereas my friend is darker skin, a little bit more like of the indigenous features, things like that. And so I guess I didn't realize that for him it was like, "Oh, you help them, but they look a lot different than I do." And so I don't know, I guess at the time, again, like I said, I didn't realize what was going through his head, because I think
Okay.
if something had happened like that to me, wouldn't have like I can't live through his experience, right? As someone who looks different than I do. So it's hard for me to put myself in his shoes when I know I have certain privileges that he will never have, right? And certain things that would happen to me that would never happen to him. And I think that's when I really realized, like, okay, this is essentially like microaggression or racism, or whatever filler word you want to call it, but it's essentially a sign of that, because the assistant manager didn't realize we were together, right? And but he helped me and the dad who looked a certain way, and he didn't help him. And so he wholeheartedly felt that it was because he looked different, and he felt that it was because he looked a lot more indigenous, a lot more Latino, even though that isn't necessarily defined, right? There's no
Right.
definition for what a Latino looks like or anything like that, but
Mhm.
you know, for lack of a better term, like that is essentially what happened. It just awoke a different, perspective in me because I had never been in a situation like that where I was also like, wait, do I say something, right? Like, do I speak out for my friend? Do I let him do the talking? Like, it was just a so like surreal moment. And the thing is, I didn't even realize when it was happening what to do or say. It was after what happened and after my friend and I started talking about it that I was like, oh, this is what people mean when they say like their white friends can step in or the people with privilege can like do
Mhm.
do damage, right? To others who maybe don't have that privilege, and I think that was a very awakening moment for me.
I can only imagine. Yeah, and it's sad because it shouldn't be like that. It should if you're going to something simple because you're having a car issue, people should be able to help you no matter what. It doesn't matter color of skin, if you're, male, female, whatever you might be. It's kind of ridiculous. I've never understood. I get it. I mean, obviously, I'm a white male. I definitely know there's privilege there, and I'm not naive in that. But it just makes me just shake my head just when people are treated that way because it just shouldn't happen. So with that experience, how did that shape the way that you approach equity and inclusion at work now?
Yeah, I think it was very much I so grad school, this was like a passion project that I was very much invested into. So like my entire thesis was about like socialism and social experimenting and what it means to be presumed white and basically being like a white passing Latino, right? So that's at least that's what I identified myself as in this project that I did for to culminate basically my grad school experience. And it was very eye opening in the sense that and to give some context, right? Like, so my mother is from Guadalajara, Mexico. My dad was also born in Guadalajara, but my dad is Spanish and Portuguese. So I'm basically like of mixed, whatever you want to call it, right? Like and I know that, and I've always known that. But I was raised with my mom and my mom's family. So culturally, I'm very, very much Mexican. I've always been very proud to be Mexican. That's the side that I identify with. That's the side that I'm like always vouching for. And I think it's also because it's the side that gets the most hate and the most, talked about. It's made fun of versus my dad, who is Spanish and Portuguese. They get praised. It's like these are like the ancestral people, so they
Mhm.
never get any negativity. So naturally, I lean more into my mom's side, what I grew up with, what I know. But knowing that I am of mixed heritage and culture and identity, it's been like a clash for me, right? To find myself in a way because right, so growing up in that, it's always been like I know I can be like white passing, and I know I'm very much white presenting, and I'm also like 6 feet tall and it's just different things, right? So diving into my project of seeing how Latinos specifically navigate the US, being either white passing or non-white passing, which is what my thesis focuses on, really helped me gain that perspective of like privilege and the foundations of like racism and how people show up and show like microaggressions and things like that. And so then when I graduated in 2020, I was like, now I have all this newfound knowledge that I didn't have before, and I can now apply it in different spaces essentially. And so I took that with me to the corporate world. I take that with me in like friendships, in relationships, in the way that I talk to people about different things that happen in the world. So as you can see, I'm very much into like the social aspect of things, but I try not to get too carried away. Of course, like I definitely don't bring up like politics and religion at work, right? And things like that. Like I'm still very structured. And of course, being an HR professional, you kind of have to be like, there's a certain place and time for things, but still knowing like, hey, this is still right and this is still not okay. So just sort of like diving into that and maybe sprinkling some of that and having that knowledge really helps me kind of have these conversations with friends because I still do with friends. I still do with like even when I'm dating, I'm like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" Right? And then that gives me an insight of like what they know, right? And I never try to be like, hey, I'm going to teach this person about blah, 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 or
Yeah.
I'm going to step in and, show the world that I know more than whatever. It's really more so just identifying where we have these commonalities, because essentially I want to be surrounded by people that not necessarily think like me, but can at least acknowledge where I come from. Right. And so, like, a lot of my best friends and a lot of people that I date or close friends, like at work, we have very similar ways of thinking, but I never ever push anyone to be like, hey, you have to be this way or you have to be that way, because I'm also not like that. I've also been very much experimental with my way of being. Even in California, like I was registered independent for like 5 years. So like again, not to go into like politics or anything, but
Yeah.
I've always been the one to be like just very open about what we know and what we think.
Well, and I think you made a good point. Religion and politics definitely should be not in the workplace. But, and I even try to even avoid it even through like even this podcast, but there are things that will come across, especially politically, as you and I both know, that are 100% affecting, the queer community right now as a whole. But
Uh-huh.
yeah, I agree. It's an interesting, yeah, you have to, I think that we kind of surround ourselves though with people that obviously are like-minded, and we tend to, it is hard when you are dating someone to not want to really dive down and want to know what they're thinking and what they believe in. But on the other hand, you're not going to be able to change them, especially if they've been having those thoughts and those beliefs for as long as they can remember. But I can also say never, because the way that I was brought up is not at all how I see the world and how I even vote as of today. Just because, yeah, it's just not who I am. And it would almost be going against the community, the queer community. But take that for what it's worth. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, from organizing a TEDx to founding Riverside Pride, your community involvement runs deep. What drives you to create those spaces outside of your day job?
What drives me to be in community spaces, for me, I would say it's almost like a therapeutic type of thing. Not sure how to describe it, but I think in a way, I feel like I grew up a little sheltered, a little bit like a little shy. I was like shy growing up in elementary school and middle school. I grew up a little bit like hidden. Like I didn't necessarily like going out playing with like my neighborhood friends and kids. I think I struggled a lot growing up with like identity and sexuality, of course. And I think now as an adult, especially grad school, I think grad school is where I really began to like open up and go into these like cross functional like roles and meet people and just be more open, be more loud with my expression. That is, I think, where I found that like being involved in community events, being involved in things that are bigger than myself was really like groundbreaking for me, because I think I was nurturing that like shy kid inside myself that was afraid of the world. Because I was like, I think like growing up, and I know it's like very common for queer people to be like, I grew up bullied and all this stuff, but I really was like, there was these like mean neighborhood kids that would just like say all these like gay slurs and things like that. And it was like grad school and post grad school that I fully became like got into like all these different things. Like the TEDx, I organized the first TEDx at my former university, Cal State San Bernardino.
Nice.
So it was the first one ever, and to me, it was just like this really cool project that I got licensed to do. And I was like, I want to take this opportunity and like do something with it. And then in Riverside, which is where my family's from in California, my friend started this almost like Riverside Pride organization. And he was like, hey, do you want to be a part of this? And I said, yeah, absolutely. And so it was me, him, and two other girls. And it was a group of four of us. And we did our meetings. We just casually would talk about like what we wanted, what was the goal of this association and things like that. And, we all just like, he moved out to go do a PhD in Alabama. I then moved to Florida. And then it was just amazing. Like this little like four group thing that started with us grew into an actual nonprofit organization with like like 25 plus members.
Wow.
And now they throw like now they throw like full on events throughout the entire year. And they have like a full Riverside Pride where they invite vendors and drag queens and like these like celebrity like people. And so it's amazing to see that it became a nonprofit and that it's thriving right now. And just to know that like I was a part of that in any capacity, right? Like I mean, I
Yeah.
didn't start it, but I feel like I helped in some type of way. So just like reflecting back and seeing these things makes me feel proud. And it almost makes me feel like a little pat in the back for the shy kid who was just like afraid of the world. And I don't know, just being able to do things that are bigger than yourself, I think are extremely rewarding. Like so this year I got to volunteer for the FIFA Club World Cup.
Oh, nice.
And so again, it's like one of those things that you're like, never thought I'd be here, but I am. And now that I volunteered and now that I got to be part of this organization that uses like 2,000 volunteers and it's like a globally known event and you see how much work and effort goes into these things, you're like, "Oh, I helped with that. And I was on TV because I was putting up the signs on the field and in a way it humbles you, but also in another way, you're like, you feel great knowing that you can give back in like these little small ways. And it definitely it helps with like your ego and it helps with like not feel so like minimal anymore, like you're a part of things that matter. And I don't know, I guess I needed that because in my adulthood or in my teenage life, I felt like I was just like I wasn't enough. Like I was always clashing with my identity, with my sexuality. And so, yeah, so now I see it as like, this is rewarding.
That's awesome. I believe that everyone should do some type of community type work just in general. I think it helps you grow. I think it helps you learn. And I had many years where I actually helped like volunteer during I'm originally from Kansas City and I helped out with their pride, my gosh, at least 4 or 5 years. And it was really cool to see kind of how everything came together. Like you just when you're just attending it, you just see the after, what
Mhm.
they've been working for months and months or an entire year to put all that stuff together. So it's pretty amazing that you and the group of you guys that helped create something that now is doing something, year round that is all because of you all getting together and having a goal of wanting to, put this out there. I think that's really awesome.
Yeah, it is.
So, mental health and authenticity. Speaking about unfavorable experiences when you were young that held you back, what helps you unlearn those behaviors and start thriving?
What helps me unlearn? I think a lot of the things that help me unlearn. Well, I mean, I think part of it comes with like growing up. I think in my early 20s, I think a lot of people identify with like, you're just like experimenting and like, you think you're immortal and you're just like doing all these things. And so like I think in my late 20s and then now that I'm in my early 30s, uh, you begin to care a little bit more. You begin to be like a little bit more intentional with your relationships, more intentional with like how you spend your time, where you invest your
Mhm.
energy, where you invest your finances. Like all these things begin to matter a little bit more. And with that, I think came like authenticity and honesty, which I think were very important because as career driven as I am, as much as I like to give back and do all these great things, I had like the worst luck in relationships. I had a hard time being honest with myself. A lot of the times I would like lie and just not really hold myself to the standard that I thought I did.
Mhm.
And so I essentially had to unlearn like toxic behaviors. And I think a lot of it came from just trauma, like as blunt as that is. Like I began to see like therapists and I began to like get close with like friends who were almost like uplifting me also, and like we were in a similar journey. And so that's where I began to unlearn toxic behaviors, specifically in like romantic relationships, because I had a really bad like strain of relationships that were just like kept ending bad and I never realized why that was. So then I was like, okay, let me just go back and focus on the things that I can thrive in, which is like work and like community and like sports and whatever. And I kept just like turning a blind eye to this, like to these other things that, but also impacted my life.
Mhm.
And I just refused to not see it. And so then I started to finally just be like, you know what? I'm old enough where I need to hold myself accountable. I need to unlearn all these things that I've been doing. I need to be honest to people, like, about who I am, about what I care about. I need to open up and not be closed off and sheltered. Um, and that's when I started to begin to get closer to like honesty and living authentically. And that's sort of where I stepped into like gratitude, which was also like a big keyword for me. Uh, and also something else that was, I think, that also like shifted for me in 2021. I was diagnosed with HIV, and 2020 2020, and that for me was like, okay, this is fine. Everything's fine. Like that meme. I was like, this is fine. Like I took it very like nonchalant, which is actually a tendency I tend to do. I minimalize like big problems.
Hmm.
So then they don't affect me, which is something I've realized now. But again, this was part of like my coping mechanism. Whenever I would break up with someone, or if something bad happened in my life, I would be like, oh, it's no big deal, it's whatever, like, moving on. And so when I was diagnosed with HIV, I did the exact same thing. I said, oh, this is whatever, like, everyone goes, so many people have this, it's fine. And then it took me a while to realize, like, this is very different, and now I have to like tell people about this, and now I have to like take this medicine, and now I have to like, it just changes things. And yeah, I think that was also a big step for me to just be like, okay, I need to be authentic and honest with myself about relationships, about friendships, about who I am, about what I care about. And so all that together began to like shape and made me go more into authenticity.
It's interesting that you talked about like with the toxic relationships. I think that I definitely did certain very stupid things in my young like relationships. I was like, what am I doing? So like when it would end, I was like looking back at it, and now I was like, well, of course it ended. I was doing stupid things, or I was purposely pushing that person away, and I think some of it obviously comes with growth. I think
Right.
obviously as you get older and you see what you're doing, it can definitely affect you overall. And especially if you've been through any type of like traumatic experiences. But having the community, having your friends, a lot of times your friends are going to call you out if they see certain things that you're doing.
That's
They'll be like,
true.
wait a minute, why? I thought that guy was a really great guy for you. Why did you just completely just kill that relationship? And I mean, sometimes I think that, well, I truly believe things happen for a reason in
Mhm.
in some aspect, especially in relationship wise. I think that you might have thought that was a person to be with, but in reality, it was a good stepping stone to get you to the next, person. And I think that if we don't learn from the past toxic relationships or whatever it might be, then we're not going to get better. It's not going to help. We're not going to be grounded. And obviously, like you mentioned, the authenticity is huge, because I think that the more we're accepting of ourselves and we're authentic in every aspect of our life, that's going to help us in the, overall. And especially, I would say, being, HIV positive, I'm sure. I like how you said it was so just kind of nonchalant. Oh yeah, okay, this is,
Okay.
and then you took a step back, kind of, and you're like, okay, well, actually, no, it is kind of, a big deal. But
Right.
I think that we're in a completely different place and time, that it isn't, it is still a big deal. But I have to say, at least it's not, looking back, into the 80s and the early night, where we didn't have the medicine, we didn't have the growth that we have now, that we can see, okay, it's not a true ticket for death. You can actually live through um, life with it. And yeah, like you said, there's things that you have to share now.
Hmm.
It's not
Yeah.
like you can be like, okay, yeah, nope, I'm not even going to share, because as we know, that can get you in a lot of trouble, especially in a relationship aspect.
Right. And it's still like in Florida, it's illegal to not share your status. So there's also like state laws that are like, hey, if you don't do
Yeah.
this, you could literally be in trouble with the law.
Yeah. But yeah. So I love your motto. Your personal motto is do everything with passion and gratitude. I love that, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
What does that look like in practice for you on a daily basis?
So for me, passion is essentially highlighting the thing, like your interests, your strengths, things like that. Well, yeah, I guess the reason why it's funny because I have this on my LinkedIn, and that's sort of where like it existed for the longest time, and it's something that I made up. I thought about it, and I was like, this is me. Like I like this. You know, I'm gonna roll with it. And then the more I thought about it, it was like, yeah, like you should do everything with passion. And so it's funny because fast forward to now, working in sports, everything is like passion is like a keyword. They throw
Mhm.
that word like everywhere in interviews and like any type of like speaking events, like anything. They're always like, oh, we're passionate, you know, we're sports, we're blah, blah, blah. And so I was like, oh, this is like very interesting how it all comes back to this, right? But for me, it was like, it's like I'm passionate about the things that I care about, which is family, right? Which is like all these like social aspects and things that I've researched and that I live by. It's like the LGBT community. It is sports too, right? And it's all these things that I do, and it's also a reminder to be like, not that like we waste time on things that we don't care about, but it's a reminder to be like, to tell myself like spend time doing the things that you care about, because oftentimes like we don't, or like oftentimes we care about what other people think, or we care about social media and we care about the likes and we care about, you know, whatever your friend's friend said at the club, or you know, like
Mhm.
all these different things. And so for me, saying doing things with passion means like if you're passionate about it is because you probably care about it and because you have some type of tie to it, like personal tie, and intrinsically like you care about it. And then the word gratitude, it's funny because gratitude I wrote out wanting to practice more gratitude. So I told myself I'm going to have this word out here because I want to remind myself to just be more grateful and like practice gratitude, like because I felt like I wasn't doing it. So, and actually like ever since like 19, my email signature always says with gratitude. And so both like my personal and my work emails always end with gratitude instead of like thank you or whatever other people respectfully, which is the one I don't like. But so to me, gratitude was like, okay, this is a nice reminder to think about like the things you do have, right? The opportunities that you've been handed, the things that you've achieved, accomplishments, but also like not always just accomplishments and like accolades, right? Also just like being grateful to be alive, being grateful that I can walk and I can run these 5Ks that I do, being grateful that I can see even though I wear contacts, like you know, all these little things that maybe we take for granted. I'm like I should be thankful for, and the way that I'm thankful is by practicing gratitude, because it's so easy to just fall into this pit of like, I didn't get the promotion this year, or I didn't get whatever.
Mhm.
You know, I have like this debt that I have to pay. I don't get to see my family often either, right? So there's all these other things that make me feel sometimes like am I in the right path right now? I'm 32, like I don't own a house. Like, and so all this almost like, which seems like a negative cloud, sometimes makes it hard for people to practice gratitude. And so having the word gratitude and being grateful for things then reinforces that idea of like, no, I'm okay, right? Like I'm living, I'm doing things that I like. I have friends that care about me. I have family that cares about me, even if they're far. You
Yeah.
know, I work for a great employer that cares about me. So I just decided like this is gonna be like my motto that I'm going to live by, and I like it. You know, it's short, simple, sweet, but it truly embodies like what I care about.
I love it because I push again and again and again the passion. I mean, you've already shown that you're passionate, obviously, about doing community work and getting out there, but you also, it's obvious you have a passion, like you said earlier, about even just being in HR. And it's awesome that you get to like kind of meld those together. So, like in your personal and your professional life, you have that passion. And gratitude is huge. I love that you ended like your signature with gratitude. That's really cool because I feel that, and you mentioned it perfectly, just because to be grateful for, oh, I got a promotion or this happened to me, or, you know, or maybe this didn't happen to me. But like you said, guess what? I woke up, I have another day. I get to do this. I get to, for you, I get to run 5Ks. I get to do that. You know, hey, that's enough alone to be grateful. And the funny thing is, I'm the same way with you with family. I'm kind of split in between. My sister lives in California, my mom's in Kansas City, and I don't get to see them as much
Right.
as I would love to. But thank goodness for technology,
Yeah.
because I actually earlier got to see my niece on FaceTime, and it's
Uh,
like, and she is like Miss ADHD right now because she's 19 months and she's running around, spinning, in circles and moving. But, that's the joy of growing up and how kids are. But I'm thankful, I'm grateful that I have enough communication with her that she knows obviously who I am, and that even if I have spurts of time that I get to see with her, I'm very, very grateful for that. But, having the passion, I've always told, clients and that whatever you're doing, you need to have that passion. You need to be happy that you're in the space that you're in, because if you're not, it's going to be a little challenging to go the day to day. But if you can do something similar to what you're doing, a lot of a community work, that at least gives you some passion, and it keeps that, that joy in your life to keep going. Even if you may not get it in the workplace, I feel that it's a win-win if you get it both in work and in your work life and your personal life, because I think your life's going to go a lot smoother just overall in general if you have that. Because when you have conflict at work or conflict at home, and you have, happiness, you're doing something happy in one of those spaces and not in both, it's going to just make life a little bit more stressful and really stressing on your mental health overall. But yeah. So, question for you: for LGBTQ plus professionals listening and watching, how can they start embodying the same mindset in their own careers? Even though I kind of said it a little bit, but how do you feel?
embody the mindset of like,
Like doing everything with passion and gratitude.
oh yeah, I think it starts with getting involved with like with things that matter to them. So when I moved to Orlando, Florida, I found this LGBTQ plus sports league. It's called Out Sports League, and I've been in it ever since. So I've been playing for 4 years, and I play kickball, dodgeball, and soccer. And so through this league, I was able to basically find all my friends because I was here by myself, and also just like untapped physical, like, I guess, talent, as uh, for lack of a better word. But you just begin to see yourself in a different light, because I never grew up playing sports. Like, I played for fun, but I never in like
Mhm.
teams or anything like that. But that was one area that I was like, oh, I actually really care about this. Like, I care about winning. I care about like a team dynamic. I care about socializing with other queer people. I care about building friendships and relationships with these people, who are oftentimes also from other states. Like, they're from all over the country. And a lot of them are also around my age, some older, some younger. So you really get to see like a broader perspective. And I was like, oh, this is definitely an area that I want to be in, a space that I want to be in, a community that I want to be a part of. And so that's just like one example. I think I'm very lucky with work, because work allows me to be myself. Orlando City Soccer, I'm blessed that they embrace diversity. I'm blessed that they tell me like, hey, what are things that you like, and how can you like almost intertwine this with HR? And that to me is just like the best thing you can tell me, because that means I can lead with things like DEI, and I can talk about LGBTQ plus things at work, and not have, some executive be like, oh no, that's not okay. It's like, no, I have the green light, right? Like, the organization is founded on diversity. So it's like, I'm allowed to do these things that matter to me. So having work validate that for me means the world. And so that's how I'm able to combine things like Out Sports League and work, and create like a special event, or be involved in community things, and see if like maybe work can sponsor some of those community things. And so that's how I really focus on like the passion part, things that I care about. And the gratitude part I think the gratitude part just comes naturally. Um, Especially if you're maybe like, I don't like, I do a lot of reflection posts. A lot of times just for myself. Like, I'm a big notes app user. So constantly,
Same. Yeah.
yeah, I'm constantly writing like lists of things, or I'm making like I'm writing out a message for myself. But then oftentimes those messages also get written out for like a LinkedIn post or a post on my Instagram or something like that. I think a lot of the times that's where I'm being grateful for the things that I have and the things that I've accomplished. And it's not necessarily like fishing for compliments or anything like that. It's more so like this is for me. If anyone can resonate with what I said, perfect. If no one does, also perfect. Like this is more so like a reflection piece, just kind of just sort of being like, I see myself, I validate myself, and I'm grateful for it. And that's it. And I mean, other people can relate. Sometimes they don't, but I think you just have to do it for yourself. And if you do it for yourself, you're already winning. And which I think is like the essence of gratitude, right? It's like
Mhm.
not necessarily thinking about anything else, but more so honing in on who you are, the things you're able to do because you're existing and you're alive.
Awesome. Great advice, I have to say. So, those are all what you got to prepare for. As I do with every interview, I have some, as I call, rapid fire questions that I ask all of my guests. And I just ask, just think of whatever comes off your, to the top of your head, like right away. I know
Right.
in the past I've had some people really think in a lot of space. I kind of joke now that I might be able to edit that on the audio aspect, but I'm going to make it just sit there on the video. So people will see you thinking and thinking and thinking. But I have a feeling this will go pretty well. So, and this is just to have fun. It's a little off the path of what obviously we, talked about, but it's helping, the listeners and the viewers get to know you a little bit more.
All right, let's go.
All right. So if you had to describe yourself as a sport or a game, what would it be and why?
Ooh, definitely a sport or a game. I would say soccer is my number one sport, but I'm also a big board game person. So
Okay.
yeah, because I'm not a video game person at all. Like, and I don't hate video games, but I'm just like I never found myself playing video games as an adult. But
Yeah.
I would
I'm
if
the
I
same way.
yeah, and if I would have to pick one, I would say soccer is my favorite sport to watch and play. I'm not the best soccer player, but I'll go with that. Otherwise, I would say like a board game, like especially like the what is it like the strategy board games, like any type of like strategy board game. I'm all in.
All right. I like that. So, well, I guess I'll just ask this. Do you drink coffee?
I do every day religiously.
All right. Well, then what is your go-to on your coffee order?
So I am a big fan of mocha. Anything with any mocha coffee anywhere I go, if they have that, that's what I'll get. If I'm at home, I'll just like just a regular coffee and then I'll add like the little mocha flavor creamer in it and that's it. Like I because that is sweet enough. Like I don't want to add anything else on it. But I'm a big chocolate person, like very big with sweets, which is also my downfall and which is why I have to run these 5Ks because otherwise I'd eat all the chocolate and sweets that I could ever imagine. And so my coffee has to have some type of like sweet in it.
Yeah, I love chocolate. I big sweet tooth, so I get that. So, all right. So, what's one song that never fails to hype you up before a big event or a meeting?
Ooh, that is a good one. Hype up song. I think so. There's this song called Angel by uh this artist Kali Uchis, and I love it. It's just so down to earth that I love it. I love like a raw song, but it's almost like pop R&B ish. So that would be like my go-to like more hype song. But I also have so there's also The Voice Within by Christina Aguilera, which is a more widely known song. And it's so the reason why I mentioned that one is because I have a tattoo on my arm. It says Trust the Voice Within.
Oh, I love that.
And so I got that tattoo based on that song because I grew up listening to Christina, especially like from high school to college. I like found her music and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I love this." And The Voice Within was just one of those songs that I was like, "Wow, this is very impactful and so deep." And I was like, "I am going to honor it by having this tattoo on my arm and reminding myself about it."
Well, it's a powerful message, too. You should trust your voice. All right, last question. If you could instantly master any skill that you don't currently have, what would it be?
Such a good question. My goodness. There's so many talents that I'm like, so like I love to sing, but I'll only sing in the shower or in the car. I've done karaoke once, but I'm extremely shy when it comes to like a public setting. So I've only done it once. I actually sang in public for a talent show that I did. Out of all things, I did a talent show where I sang.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But I did it because it was so we were raising money for a nonprofit. And that's really the only reason why I did it, because otherwise, like, you can't pay me enough to be on stage and sing. So I think singing would definitely be like, I love it. I think if I had a singing voice, like, you wouldn't be able to shut me up. It's either that or I think art, because I grew up with so much art. Like, I used to draw all the time. My family thought I was going to go into art school growing up because I loved drawing and painting and all that stuff. But obviously, I got away from that, and I was like, "Oh, there's, like, really good artists out there." So, I think if I was to, like, easily make something like the way artists do now, even, like, with pottery and all these different cool, like, pieces, like, that'd be amazing. Like, I would wanna do that forever.
That's awesome. Well, I do sing. I've actually, my gosh, I've been singing since I was like little. And
Wow.
I'm even in a chorus here in Denver that it's an LGBTQ plus chorus, and it's amazing. I have to say, I mean, I've been in choir pretty much my entire life, and
Wow.
it's much more fun and impactful when you get to sing with a chorus of people, number one, that want to be there, but we're also singing with a message and a
Yeah.
purpose. And I think that I think that's why I love doing it. You know, out of the 10 years that I've been here in Denver, this is my 8th season, you know, being in this course. As some people were like, "Wow, you joined right away when you come when you moved here." And I was like, "Well, kind of. I had to check them out a little bit before I, you know, auditioned because I hate auditioning." So it's very nerve-wracking, but I have to say with our new director, I'm very thankful I didn't have to do that type of audition. That scared me just hearing what he sent out a list of what they had to do. Nope, so glad I'm in this choir already. I
Wow.
would
No,
have
that's awesome.
failed miserably because yeah, no. That's no, no. Big no. I didn't even like auditioning. I did musicals in high school, and I remember auditioning, you know, for that. And that was nerve wracking. Even though there was only like a couple people there, when you audition for like our choir, like probably half the choir is there listening to you. And that's even more nerve wracking. In karaoke, yeah, I've done it I think twice. I can't
Wise?
twice. That's it. I don't really like it. One, I didn't have a choice. First
Oh,
time was actually at a gay bar, and because I was new, one of the things they did if you were new to the bar, they would drag you up on stage and you
my
would have to
goodness.
do karaoke.
That's terrifying.
It was very terrifying. Full bar, Sunday night, beer bus thing going on. A Yeah. Thankfully, I knew the song. So that was a little bit helpful, but it was still nerve-wracking. I'm pretty sure I was like beet red, and I know I was sweating like crazy because I was like, "No, I don't like this. I don't
I
like
hate
that."
that feeling, especially when you're like, you're red or sweating, or and then you realize you have that thought of like, everyone knows that my face is red, and it's just like, it's the worst.
And I mean, I was complimented after the fact of like how good I sounded, and I kind of was like, "Well, yeah, I knew the song," but I didn't say that to them. I was saying it in my head. I'm like going, "Well, yeah, I knew the song," so that helped a little bit.
Yeah.
But and then the second time, I was just doing karaoke with some friends, and yeah, no, I would rather. I'm not gonna lie, I sing in the car, you know, all the time. Of course, right now it's because I'm trying to learn music, you know, for a
Yeah.
concert. But outside of that, yeah, I don't like to. I mean, even though my partner and I both used to sing in a choir together, I don't sing a lot out, you know, around out and about just because I don't know, just
Huh.
kind of saving my voice, I guess. I don't know. That's a bad excuse.
No, or you might just like the setting of like a group, right? Like, that's why. So we have a choir here too. It's called the Orlando Gate Choir or Chorus. And they do like performances too. And I think it's maybe like some of those people play in the Outsports League, which is kind of cool.
Oh, cool.
And I think that like they like the group setting of like harmonizing together. So like, like you said, they're not one to be like, oh, I want to be on stage and like sing my lungs out. Like, so I don't know. It's fascinating to think about.
For sure. All right. So, Francisco, if you could leave our listeners with one piece of advice about embracing resilience, living authentically, or leading with gratitude, what would it be?
I would say focus on your strengths, be yourself. I guess my motto, just do everything with passion and gratitude. Like, really like don't think twice about it, take every step for what it is. Yeah, and just kind of go with that. Go with your instinct, trust the voice within, like my tattoo says. I think we need those little reminders sometimes to ground ourselves. So definitely that.
Well, Francisco, thank you so much for
Thank
sharing your
you.
story, your resilience, and your wisdom with us today. From breaking barriers as a first generation queer Latino to championing inclusion in HR and beyond, you have shown us that living authentically and with gratitude isn't just a nice phrase, it's a way to thrive. So I thank you very much for that.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
So, listeners, for those listening, or I guess watching, you can go and check out Francisco's published thesis, Passing versus Non Passing Latinx Understandings of Being Presumed White. It's available online. And if you're in Florida, don't miss out on his LinkedIn group, LGBTQ plus Florida Professionals Community. It's a space for connection, support, and growth. So until next time, stay empowered, stay out, and remember to lead with passion, gratitude, and the resilience that makes your story uniquely yours.